I was talking about the Greek period, and I was telling you that there are different phases in it. The first phase is the Milesian phase, the Milesian school. The second is the Eleatic phase or the Eleatic school. The third phase is what is very important for us, which is the Athenian school phase. And if you look at the final phase, which is the Hellenistic phase, the Hellenistic phase essentially shows a certain kind of, uh, you know, a degeneration in the Greek civilization. And degeneration here, we have to try and understand it properly. Degeneration does not mean that it becomes morally degenerative. It is just that the luminousness that one saw in the early Greek period, that particular luminousness is something that goes missing. Uh, the most luminous phase, of course, is the Athenian phase, at least for us. And if you look at the Hellenistic phase, what you find is that it tends to sink into some kind of uh, pessimism. If you say pessimism, what we mean by pessimism here is philosophical pessimism. It's philosophical pessimism. You must understand that words, when we use them commonsensically, they are different. They are different from technically used words or words that have a technical meaning. Words, phrases, all these. So if you say it is a pessimistic phase, uh, we're not looking at something which is, what should I say, uh, which is pessimistic in the way in which we use it in an everyday language. It is a pessimistic phase in the sense that uh, till the Athenian period, uh, we see that there is an attempt to understand the world till the Athenian period, starting with the Milesians. But by the time we come down to the uh, by the time we come down to the Milesian period, not Milesian, I'm sorry, uh, the Hellenistic period, you find people giving up uh, attempts to try and explain the world, to understand it, and to create a better society, a better polis, Polis. These things are no longer done. So you have schools like the Stoics. The Stoics basically believed that, you know, whatever life throws at you, you should accept it. You should not complain. You should not try to believe that you can better things. Uh, so that's what these people say. And so they are not trying to understand the world. They are not trying to make it a better place. They are just accepting the world as it comes. If the Stoics are like this, Stoic, Stoic, uh, the philosophy is called Stoicism. Then you have the Cynics, Cynics, Cynics. Uh, the Cynics are those people who are, what should I say, people who believe there is nothing good in the world, nothing great will happen, no great happiness will ever be available to people in the world. So that is cynicism, some kind of disenchantment with the world, so to speak, uh, a complete disenchantment with the world. That is what cynicism is. And then you have this rather peculiar and very different kind of a movement, which is called the Epicurean movement, though it also falls in the Hellenistic phase. It is not like cynicism. It is not like, uh, it is not like, what should I say, uh, cynicism or stoicism. Epicureanism draws its name from Epicurus. You can't call him a philosopher because he didn't have a philosophy. Um, Epicurus was a cripple, and Epicurus forwarded this idea that there is no life after death, which is something that you'll find in people like Pythagoras and in uh, people like uh, Plato. Okay, so Plato and Pythagoras believe that we have a soul, but Epicurus says we don't have a soul, we don't have anything like that in us. We are just matter, matter. We are matter and we are just energy. Life is energy in the matter. So he said, when you die, it's just the energy having dissipated from the body. That is what he said. So he said, you never know when death will come, how it will come. So while you are alive, instead of striving to find out about these various different things. What you should do is enjoy life. And literally, his enjoy life had this particular meaning of wining and dining. Okay, drink, eat, don't worry, live for today, live in the moment. All these were things that were talked about by Epicurus. Somebody in Hyderabad actually had a sense of, what should I say? He had a sense of humor. Um, in opposite the Nizam's Institute of Medical Sciences, at one time there was a bar, uh, and this bar was called the Epicurus Bar. So somebody who was apparently well versed with Greek philosophy started this bar, and it was there for quite some years. Anyway, bars and Epicurus apart, I had told you that we will start with the Milesian school. So let's do the Milesian school. Uh, Now, while we are doing the Milesian school, please remember that the Milesians uh, came from the province called Miletus. They came from this province called Miletus, and because they came from Miletus, Miletus, they were called Milesians. sorry, sorry about that. Very sorry again. Uh, so we are basically looking at this whole thing of people being called Milesians because they came from Miletus. In some books, you might even find the Milesian school being called the Ionian school. Ionian is Ionian, Ionian. That is because of the province of Ionia, the larger province adjoining the Ionian Sea, and Miletus was there. So people call it the Ionian school as well. And these four stages that I talked about, I had said that the first stage is Milesian. You will also find some people calling it the Ionian phase in Greek history. Whatever you call it, the content of that is the same. There is no difference in the content. The content is pretty much the same because we are talking about the same people. Now, if you look at the Milesians, there are three people, and these three people are the ones who constitute the Milesian school. Uh, the three people are Thales, Thales. I told you the other day that the pronunciation in Greek, whenever there is an es, you have to read it as is. Thales, Socrates. You don't say Socrates. You don't say Thales. So this is Thales. Then you have Anaximander and Anaximenes. 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 These three people constitute the Milesian school. Let me give you two clarifications here. One clarification is that when we are talking about these people constituting a school, we are not using school in our everyday sense of the term, where we say go to school, or you say which school did you study in. It is not exactly that kind of a school, and it is definitely not a school of fish. You know, like you say, herd of buffalo, pride of lions. You sorry about this. So the uh, school is that these are people who constituted uh, a group that had very similar pursuits. That is what it means. Okay, a group that had very similar pursuits. So, what are the similar pursuits? That is the thing that we'll have to look at when we talk about this Milesian school. And then, of course, uh, a second clarification. The second clarification is that which pertains to uh, the idea of, you know, when we are calling these three people a school, they are not all contemporaries. That is basically what you need to understand. They are not contemporaries. What they are is that they are people who come in different times. So when Thales was trying to understand the world, at that particular time, we didn't have Anaximander. Anaximander came after Thales. Anaximander, when he was trying to understand the world, there was no, what should I say? There was no um, Anaximenes. Anaximenes came after Anaximander. So, in that sense, they are not contemporaries. All of them didn't exist at the same time. It was not like all of them basically, uh, you know, uh, were there in Miletus at the same time. They weren't there. But yet, we are calling them a school. So we have to answer this particular question about why we are calling this three people who were not together, who didn't know each other. Why are we calling them? Why are we lumping them together and calling them the Milesian school? Apart from the fact that they came from Miletus. But there were so many other people who came from Miletus. It doesn't mean that we call everybody who came from Miletus as Milesian school. You can call them Milesians, yes, but you can't call them Milesian school. So, what is it that makes it possible to talk about the Milesian school? If we are talking about the Milesian school, please remember that it is an extremely path-breaking, when I say it is a path-breaking school, what I mean is that this particular group of disparate individuals all had a similarity of an idea. Only one similarity of idea. The rest were not uh, similar in terms of their ideas. Okay, their ideas are very, very dissimilar, but there is one underlying idea, one underlying principle that makes this whole thing, uh, what should I say? It makes the whole of the Milesian school a school. You must understand that Marx, Karl Marx, I'm talking about, was probably right when he said that the ancient civilization anywhere in the world represents the childhood of the humankind. Okay, it represents the childhood of the humankind because at it is at this time that mythologies were built. Now, look at any ancient civilization. There are mythologies. Okay? Look at ancient Indian civilization. It also has another dimension. But mythology is also one dimension that is very much integral to the uh, ancient Indian civilization. And this you can see in the form of vahanas. Vahanas are the animals that gods used to travel on. So Shiva's vahana is the Nandi. Nandi is a bull. So Shiva traveled on a bull. Vishnu. Vishnu's travel was on an eagle, the Garuda. So he flew around, whereas Shiva was on terra firma. Well, there is Brahma, but Brahma apparently didn't move, so he didn't need a vahana. But Indra had the Airavat, the white elephant. And if you look at other gods like uh, Ganesha, Ganesha was somebody who was uh, traveling on a mouse, and Subramanya used a peacock. Is that really possible? That's not possible. And that's what makes these mythologies. Mythologies are not correct explanations. They are imaginary. Please remember that. All mythologies at any time, we'll have mythologies are there even in the modern period, but I won't talk about that now. That's in the second semester, we'll talk about that. Uh, but mythologies are there everywhere. Okay, the Egyptians believed that what should I say? Uh, the Egyptians believed that uh, crocodiles were sacred. So we can go on and on about it, so let's not do it. So Greeks had their own mythology as well. They had their gods. Their gods were Zeus, Zeus, who was their head god. Then there was Apollo, there's Dionysius. So you had these different pantheon. It's not like us in India. They had many gods, and all the Greek gods were anthropomorphic. By anthropomorphic, what we mean is they look like human beings. Even the gods look like human beings. Anthrop, A-N-T-H-R-O-P, Anthrope. Anthrop basically means a human being. One who hates human beings is called a misanthrope. The Americans say misanthropist, but misanthrope is sufficient. So all these gods had the human form, and one of the gods of the Greeks is Atlas. And what is it that we see in Atlas? Okay, what is it that we see in Atlas that is of significance to us? In Greek mythology, the earth was a flat disk, okay? And they believed that the god Atlas was carrying the disk called earth, which the Greeks called Geo, 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 not Jio. That is Mukesh Ambani's. Uh, Geo was carried by Atlas. So that is why Geo, whenever you study anything to do with the earth, it's called geo, geography, geology. So geo. Now, Thales was the first person, at least documented first person, who basically didn't agree with Greek mythology. He saw Greek mythology as complete balderdash. He believed that the uh, Greek mythology was just imaginary stories, and he was absolutely right. Any mythology is actually imaginary stories. So he said, by pursuing mythology, we are never going to have knowledge of the earth, geo. We're never going to know what life is. We're never going to know what life is, what the earth is. So these questions, philosophical questions, are the ones that he asked. Now, please remember that if you look at uh, the word philos, Philos, philos is the basis of philosophy, and philosophy essentially means studying the world. By that, what you mean is you don't study the world in books. That's not how you study it. You study the various different phenomena that are happening around you, and you try to find an explanation for that. Why does or how does a particular phenomenon exist? Okay, so you can ask yourself this question. Why does it rain? From where is it raining? Okay, in Indian mythology, we'll say there is a rain god, Varuna, and he is the one who pours the water up from the skies onto the earth. Now, these kind of answers, these kind of explanations were not acceptable. They were not acceptable to most to Thales. Thales said, if we have to understand this world, we have to use categories of nature itself. Natural phenomena should not be explained through imaginary mythologies. That is what uh, Thales believed in. He said, you should not believe in this whole mythological explanation because they are purely imaginary. So he said, true knowledge is philosophical, where you explore the world, and by explore, it can be even a physical exploration. You can explore a rock and see what is it. Today, we talk about different kinds of rocks, igneous rocks, granite. We talk about all these different kinds of rocks. And so that is the kind of thing that Thales is talking about. Thales is saying, please, let's not take recourse to mythology. Let us absolutely not take recourse to mythology. We should explain the world in terms which are natural by using categories which are natural. Now, the question that Thales asked himself was, how did the universe come into being? Okay? How did the universe come into being? So he wanted to answer it scientifically. Now, I've used the word science here. I've said scientifically. Let me draw your attention to the fact that in the modern period, thanks to Auguste Comte and positivism, we see science and philosophy as opposite categories. Okay? Auguste Comte made this famous statement that wherever there is philosophy, there is no science. Or wherever there is science, there should not be philosophy. For him, philosophy is a bad thing. Science is a good thing. But for people like Thales, and for the Greeks in general, through all phases of the Greek civilization, science and philosophy were interchangeable words. They were interchangeable. Okay, so when you have this man, Thales, talking about science or philosophy, he wanted an explanation of how the world came into being. He wanted to begin at the beginning. Okay? Begin at the beginning. That is what he wanted. And he believed that everything came out of one, one primary substance. Everything came out of one primary substance, and that what was that primary substance? That is what we had to understand. If we understood that, then you go to the next step. So what we use today, cause-effect relationships, in order to explain different things. You say, Secunderabad Club caught fire. That is the effect. What is the cause? Some short circuit there. Okay. So you explain things in terms of what is called causal analysis. So it was the endeavor of Thales to try and find out the first substance and then give a causal explanation for the rest of the world. I'll stop here today. I'll see you tomorrow. We will continue with the Milesian school. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow. Thank you.